No, I don't know. Is it I I am starting over. I am so sorry. I am late. And by the way, I did not know I was late until right now. So I have just botched this up big time. I didn't know that it wasn't streaming. So one of the purposes of this video is to talk about how to do a live stream, or more specifically, how to do a high quality live stream. And I just made the first big mistake. And that's partially the reason I created this channel, is I wanted to be able to talk about what works and what doesn't work. Oh, and by the way, I guess I should start off with a little introduction, because you may be just tuning in now. And again, once again, I'm so sorry that this video was delayed. But a funny story about it is I actually hit the button at exactly 11 a.m. I had said in my, my scheduled event that it would start at 11 a.m. But when I hit the button that says get started, I didn't know that that wasn't the button to actually start the actual stream. So I have been talking for 14 and a half minutes to myself, which I'm used to. But I did not know it was not broadcasting. So I didn't know that. And the funny thing is, I never would have even realized that if I didn't actually look over to the counter saying, well, I wonder why they don't put a counter on how long you're talking. And why was I talking about that? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. So here we are. My name is Joe Crescenzi. And by the way, I guess I could push a little button. It'll tell you that. I don't know. Do I have buttons for those sorts of things? I don't think so. I thought I did. It just goes to show you when you're not prepared, you're not prepared. I was trying to do a little, there we go. Isn't that kind of cool? And I don't know if that's actually working. And I was supposed to have it on a button, but what am I going to do? Anyhow, here I am. I am doing a live stream about how to do a great live stream. And of course, it's kind of ironic I'm doing this, because I'm doing this in a capacity whereby I've never really done a good live stream. I did one attempt. I have to say that. I did one attempt at doing a live stream, and I don't even, now look at this. The timer is gone from the screen. I do not know, again, am I actually broadcasting? Yes, I think I am. I think you have to hover over to find out. So, and it is a big problem with not knowing what you're doing here. And it looks like I might actually be on the air. So let's start over. Let's start the story over. And I don't know if it was going out before. So that's what's funny about the whole situation. Anyhow, I had made an attempt. Not great grammar. Sue me. I made an attempt a few weeks ago to do a live stream. And then everything and anything that could possibly go wrong did. Thankfully, I didn't do it on this channel. Or maybe thankfully I did. I don't know. I wanted to talk about all the right things that can happen and all the wrong things that could happen. And, oh, I have somebody saying hello. And I think that I have the kind of software where I can actually give them a little props by acknowledging them. And there you go. I think that's something, and we'll talk about that software and how it works and what it does and all that. And I don't even know how to make it go away. I don't know what I just did. But hey, Alpha Omega Creations so far, viewing my my thing. And of course, that's kind of nice. And I don't know how to make it go away. But hey, you're getting lots of airtime, because I don't know how to make the message go off the screen that I just threw on it. Maybe I'll learn that. Anyhow, and I really don't know how to make that not show up. Do I do it? Oh, I think I push another button. And we're going to talk about that, among other things, too, later. So sorry for the distraction, but I'm like everyone else. I like pushing buttons and finding out what they do. Like I found out how to use my little button over here, and I think that works. Hey, look at that. So to ramble on, and by the way, I'm intentionally rambling on in a small way, and I'm going to give you my reason in a second. It's like I forget to finish a story and I start a new one. So I started this other live stream just a couple weeks ago, and everything and anything that could go wrong did. So the first thing that happened in the process of trying to learn this thing was that I found out the hard way that you really have to make sure you've prepared at least somewhat. Now, I'm one of those guys that likes to shoot from the hip. If I don't have the right gear, I like to do it anyway. I literally created a blog originally, idea of the day, that was intended to be a video blog. It took me 2 years to actually do the first video, and I don't know why. I was just lazy, I guess. But I was doing text stuff. So anyhow, you got to make sure you're at least somewhat ready, but don't let it hold you back. If you make a mistake, you fix it. Nobody will notice. Like if I did this video and I didn't have an audience, and let's say I even did have an audience, I screw up. What's the worst that'll happen? So you do it again. You come back and you learn. So what did I learn the last time? I started the video and I tried to do it in 4K. because I have a 4K camera. I'm using a DSLR, Canon EOS 90D, and I was trying to use a capture card, in this case a CamLink from Elgato, the CamLink 4K. Now the CamLink 4K is something that basically lets you plug in to a USB port, an HDMI, and it captures it, and it turns it into a camera that you could just use in anything. In fact, you could use that, let's say you're doing a Zoom and you want to really look great. So instead of using the built-in webcam, you're using a DSLR, something really high-end. So I thought that would be great. I'm going to put this out there in 4K. But what I neglected to do, and I learned the hard way, was make sure that I was really set up for that. In other words, you have to make sure if you're going to shoot out something in 4K, you better have good bandwidth. Now, I have pretty good bandwidth in my house, but I don't have good Wi-Fi in my studio. So I learned the hard way that what happened is I tried to do my video in 4K with Wi-Fi in literally the furthest room from my Wi-Fi hub. My Wi-Fi hub is the complete opposite side of my house. And the reception was so bad that it started to stream and then it literally stopped. It stopped in the middle of like a minute or two into the video. And at that point, I didn't even know if I was on the air, so to speak. I didn't know what it was doing. I didn't know what I could do with it. And the funny part about it was that I then tried to just pick up and hit the button again. And of course, between that point where it failed because of not enough network bandwidth, and by the way, I solved that here, just so you know. I'm using a wired connection this time. So I'm on a full gigabit connection. But I'm not trying the 4K again. That's too much of a push. So I found out the hard way that what it did do is it did have a gap. I assumed it ended the video, but I wasn't sure. I literally wasn't sure because I knew it told me the stream ended because there was not enough bandwidth. I plugged it back in, and then I started talking again because the counter was moving again. And I said, all right, I wonder what that's doing. Well, I didn't know. I kept saying, hey, anybody out there, give me a thumbs up. Let me know what you're doing. And then the next day, when I look at the history, you know, on my videos, and I see the stream from the previous day, I'm able to see that what it actually did was it took the first part of the video and it played it up until the point where the camera went out. And instead of having like the 3 or 4 minutes of silence where I didn't have the wires in and I wasn't even plugged into the camera, what it ended up doing there was it literally was almost like it was a split second later. So here I am talking and then cut off in the middle of a sentence. Cut off in the middle of a sentence, and then immediately there I am saying, all right, I'm back. I think I'm back. Anybody know if I'm here? I don't know if it's going out. So I tried that. So if you are curious about what would happen if you literally unplugged your cable in the middle of the session, or just, I don't know, you lost power on your computer and then you turn it back on and you start it, yeah, it'll actually continue the feed. And then when you play it back, it will look like it was never there. I found that to be pretty interesting. So that's what it did, but I wouldn't have known this at the time. We all learn from something. Here's another dilemma, and this is one of the reasons I am going to try to keep this video somewhat longer than it probably needs to be. And there's probably a lot more gear here to talk about, and I will get into that because that's the essence of this channel. I talk about some of the gear and how it works and all that. When you use something like that Elgato CamLink 4K to capture the USB stream, what it has is an actual limit of 29 minutes and 59 seconds. And it will not make a video that's 30 minutes or more. It stops at actually 29 minutes and 59 seconds. And originally, I was curious about, well, why would it cut off that arbitrary amount? And then after doing a little research, it turns out that it has something to do with the customs department and the fact that DSLRs are considered cameras, regular cameras. And that decades ago, the customs department and some people probably lobbied to have a tariff, a higher tariff on video cameras, because video cameras are popular now. Meanwhile, nobody buys video cameras anymore. But video cameras had a higher tariff than a regular camera. So because of the higher tariff, they imposed a limit from the manufacturing point to avoid the higher tariff. In other words, Canon in this case, and Nikon probably has the same problem, Canon in their particular case put in something that limits it in the firmware to 29 minutes and 59 seconds so that it would not qualify as a video camera. Meanwhile, it is a very popular camera for people to make real theatrical grade, footage. Almost every Canon DSLR is. But to make the standard DSLRs have a lower tariff, they limit it to 29 minutes. Well, long story short, I am not using that cam link this time. This time, I'm connecting to the DSLR, the Canon EOS 90D, using a USB cable. And because of that, I am curious to find out if it will cut us off at the 29 minute and 59 second mark. Now, originally, my plan was to just watch the timer on the video as I'm looking at it. And I'm looking at it now, and it says 10 minutes and 45 seconds. Well, the problem with that is that I actually started the camera long before that because, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I accidentally forgot to hit the start button. So for 15 minutes, it was already on the camera. So somewhere about 15 minutes or so into this video, we will find out if by using a Canon in USB mode, if it will continue past the 29 minute and 59 second mark. That is huge for streamers because if you want to do a stream that is longer than 30 minutes, you don't want the camera to turn off in the middle of the stream. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, I don't need to stream that long. Well, if you're streaming like an event or you're streaming a game or whatever other thing you're doing, 29 minutes is just not enough for certain things. And I have watched some really nice streams that were way over an hour. I've seen long, long streams. In fact, I just watched a stream from Curtis Judd and Booth Junkie and Bandrew from Podcast Age, and I forgot the fourth fella. I've watched him a gazillion times. Anyhow, apologies, I think his name's James. Anyhow, and they've gone longer than that, but they weren't using DSLRs. So a DSLR has that limit, and I am trying to avoid that limit. Now, let's talk about how I'm doing this. Now, Canon just recently, and when I say recently, I mean literally yesterday or the day before, released a beta piece of software that lets you use a Canon DSLR as a webcam. And by webcam, that means you could use any program that can use a webcam, and it'll see the Canon DSLR as a webcam. And I actually wrote Canon in the comments and say, hey, does this break the 30-minute thing? And they wrote me something ambiguous back that I couldn't even understand. So I don't know if it'll break the 30-minute limit. But the weird thing about it is they made that software only for Windows, not for Mac, and I'm using a Mac. Good news is there are other ways. There's a program that I found on GitHub, but it's really complicated to use, and maybe we'll talk about that later if we have some time. But I'm using a program right now called Ecamm Live. That's E-C-A-M-M Live. And I've got to tell you, I've only had this program for a very short amount of time, but I am absolutely loving this program. I mean, it can do some amazing things, and I'm only using some of those features right now. I have, for example, just figured out how to do something like this, and that is something that's called a lower thirds. It's actually not a lower thirds feature in Ecamm Live, but it has these ability to put these different overlays in there. Like I could turn on and off a variety of little images that I might create inside of a regular image editor. You could use Photoshop. You could use almost any image editor, and then Ecamm Live gives you a very easy interface for just making them visible or not visible, and I can import them in. Here, I just figured out, for example, how to turn on that image from the fellow that sent me a comment, and again, interesting thing about that is I don't even know how to move it. So it's like I'd like to keep the people who are nice enough to leave a comment somewhere on the screen, but I don't know how to move the damn thing yet, and I'm going to learn that. If you do leave a comment or a reaction of some sort, I'm just going to say hello and give your channel a shout out. So it can do an awful lot of things. For example, while I'm streaming, it can tell me how many people are watching at that moment and how many people reacted, sent a thumbs up or something like that. So Ecamm Live, again, it's a program I'm using at the moment. To me, it is probably, and as far as I know, it's just for Mac, but I could be wrong. Ecamm Live is a phenomenal program because the other alternatives are there's a program called OBS, and everyone out there is telling you, oh, just use OBS. It's the one thing you need. It's the only thing you need. Well, OBS is a little complicated, and I found Ecamm Live to be just really, really easy. And at some point, I'm going to figure out how to do a screen thing, and there is a way to do that here, and we're going to learn that too. So let's talk a little bit more about my setup and what works and what doesn't. Now, first of all, I just want to hit a button here. This should be real interesting. I'm going to go to my camera, and I'm going to go here, and you could see this. I don't know if you've noticed it, but it doesn't look as good, right? I don't look as good. And if I push another couple of buttons, I won't sound as good either. In fact, let me try that. I'm gonna just do this. Blah, blah, blah. Where's that echo? Here we go. now this changes the complexion of this quite a bit. So what did I do? I just turned on the built-in MacBook Pro, and this is a pretty recent MacBook Pro. Turned on the built-in MacBook Pro. What do they call that? The FaceTime camera or whatever they call it. I'm using the built-in camera. I gotta remember to look here. I'm using the built-in camera on a MacBook Pro, and I'm using also the built-in microphone on the MacBook Pro. And this is one of the things that I guess is real important to talk about. When you do a live video, you don't need to have like thousands of dollars worth of equipment, right? You don't need to, but it helps. You don't have to though, and I'm going to talk about some of the other alternatives. The point there is, if you're using a built-in camera, you're really crippling yourself in terms of the quality. Apple's MacBook Pro cameras, I mean, they have to fit in a tiny little bezel with a teeny little lens, so they don't have great picture quality. The microphone quality actually has gotten better over the years since, they just tweak them a little bit, but they're still nowhere near what you're going to get when I switch back to my microphones. So what I do in here, I've improved the quality of my live stream by using a USB microphone. And technically it's a little better than a USB microphone, and we'll talk about that too. But you could see one of the things you could do to improve the quality of a web stream is to use something other than keep looking at the other camera. Use something other than the built-in microphone. Now, in this particular case, the video is 50% audio. You want to have decent audio. So I'm using a high-end microphone. In fact, you can see one of them. I'm using two right now. This one here is a very expensive microphone. This is a Neumann TLM 103. I mean, this is a $1,300 microphone. You don't have to use a microphone that good. But and above me, I have another microphone. This is a Sennheiser MKH 416. It's a $1,000 microphone. I'm using both together because I thought maybe if I moved around, I might want to be close to one or the other, and I wanted to make sure I was still getting a good sound quality. So I'm going to switch back the camera to the 90D, and you notice drastically better picture. So the point is how you produce your video. It's directly, I mean, if you had to choose, to be honest with you, about having a good picture, a good sound, I'm personally leaning towards the sound. And now maybe I'm a little biased because I love microphones, and I have about 25 or 30 microphones. But good microphones make a huge difference. You don't need to spend this much money. I could tell you offhand, if you go out and you buy like a Blue, this company named Blue Yeti, right? It's like $100. I mean, I know it sounds like a lot for a microphone for some people, but it's just USB. It's self-contained, and there are other USB microphones you can get out there from Rode, from Shure, from all the big manufacturers. But you look for a USB microphone, and I'm telling you, if you just plug that in and tell your streaming software that instead of using the built-in microphone, you want to use the USB microphone, then you're going to have quality somewhat like this. I mean, it's not as good, but it's going to be close. And by close, I mean, I could tell you I've got like 25 microphones. And if you try to compare the 25 microphones, it is very difficult, extremely difficult for me to tell the difference between a microphone that's $150 or $100 and a $500 one. And between a $500 and $1,000, the differences, again, are really small. So you get the best microphone you can afford, but get a microphone other than the built-in one you can do. Now, of course, the other thing is people could stream also directly from a phone. I'm not a real big fan of that for a gazillion reasons. A phone has poor microphones. The cameras may be great, but you're limited in what you can do with it. You're going to have the one camera. It's going to be on. It's going to do what it's going to do there. But if you can use a program, a piece of software like this, I'm going to just show you, for example, while I'm in here, I'm going to tell it that the source or my camera, let's say I want to share my screen. I can actually do that. And now within that, I could launch something like a browser. And now you could see the browser, and it should be broadcasting right now the desktop. And of course now it's it's showing itself. But while it's doing this, you can see I can say, hey, let's go to Mac Rumors and talk about whatever's happening right now. So I'm able to broadcast not just whatever is on my mobile phone. So using some sort of software can make a huge difference. Now, there are some free alternatives to something like Ecamm Live. There's OBS. There's a whole bunch of other things. There's a CamTwist, which is like free as well. So there are these other things, and I'm going to try to switch us back again. I got to get back into this window and choose as my source the camera. And there I am. I'm back again. So, and by the way, I just want to check our timer. According to our timer, we have been broadcasting for 21 minutes. Now, I can tell you now, 21 minutes, pretty amazing actually for one huge reason. As I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest problems I had is trying to use a DSLR, again, to get the better quality picture. If you're using an HDMI capture, you are going to have problems because it will cut you off at exactly 29 minutes and 59 seconds. It will not hit that 30th minute, or it would have that higher tariff. So suffice it to say, mission accomplished. By doing that, we know for sure that's what'll happen. It will break the 30-minute barrier. That is hugely important for me because I do want to do more videos because I have a lot of gear to go over. And if you're new to my channel, this particular channel, that's my personal channel, just under my name, just Joe Crescenzi. Under this channel, I go through a lot of gear. I go through the kinds of gear that you're going to want to have for good quality lighting, good quality sounds, good quality video, streamers, audio engineers, all of this stuff. Now, I want to also preface that by saying I'm no expert on this, but I'm pretty good. I'm learning this technology, and one of the things I love to do is just try new things out and talk about what works with me, what doesn't. Or learn with me, learn from my mistakes. Oh, there you go, another phone call coming in. So I really got to make sure I turn off the. I don't know how to turn that off. This is terrible. Somebody's trying to come through, and I am not able to turn it off. Not a good thing. You don't want to have that happen. And now I don't know. I think I'm actually there. That might turn off the ringer. I have to hit this button here. So, hey, there's a thing that you might want to learn from when you're doing a live broadcast. Do not leave your phone on if you can avoid it. And if you do, figure out a way to incorporate that into your stream or whatever. Like use Skype or something like that. But I just learned the hard way not to do that. So let's get back to some of the hardware and because that's kind of what I want to talk about, hardware and software. So what am I using today? I am using, again, two Sennheiser they're technically Sennheisers. This one here, again, is a Neumann, but they're actually both made by the same manufacturer. The Sennheiser is plugged in, well, they're both plugged in, to something called the RODECaster. And I definitely need to set this up next time with two cameras so I could point the camera down to the desk to see some of the gear in here. Because what am I using today? I'm using the Ecamm Live software. I'm using the two microphones. I have something here called the StreamDeck, which I did not configure in time to really do anything effective during the broadcast, but there are buttons in there that I could push that can do things like turn on the screen share with one button or turn on that lower thirds, which I think I could do from here, but to me that's awkward to have to push a button to do it from there. I'd rather have a button on my StreamDeck. I could show you the StreamDeck and show you how many buttons it has. It's got like, 32 buttons? Yeah, I think it's got 32 buttons. So I could program any of those buttons to turn on a sound or to fire up an overlay video, or maybe to switch to a second camera if I had the second camera set up. To do things like I definitely can push buttons here and turn on some of the basics, but I did not configure that on this particular video. So I am now also using a is it called a RODECaster Pro? It's a RODECaster Pro as my audio interface. Now you could use a lot cheaper audio interfaces than a RODECaster Pro, but the RODECaster Pro gives me some extra bells and whistles that are just out of this world. Specifically, I would like to show you a couple of those things, and definitely you don't need them to do a live stream, but I want to show you what they do. Like right now, I have a button here that I could push, and I could add a little sound effect into my video. I could push this button there, I could push that button there, and there's little sounds that I could figure in there. And of course, I have my original built-in sounds, like at the beginning of my videos. If you've watched my channel, I have these sounds over here, and that's my usual intro to my video. And now, of course, it's happening live, and there are dials here where I can dial up how loud that is. Maybe that was too loud. I apologize if you're wearing a headset. I have all of these different sound effects. I can integrate the 4 microphones, right? I could turn on 4 different microphones. Right now I'm using 2. So what it lets you do is you could use up to 4 microphones. So if you're doing a podcast with several people, what you do is you can plug a different microphone into each of the 4. Plus, you have an additional input from USB. So that would be if you want to bring in somebody from Skype or Zoom or FaceTime, for example, or something like that. Then you have another input, which is it says iPhone, or it's a picture of a phone on it, but it basically just takes the 1/4 inch or the 3/8 inch plug that's on the bottom of most phones, and it plugs that in so that you could use that as a sound source. And then lastly over here, well, not lastly, second to last, you can also bring in a Bluetooth sound source. So if you have a Bluetooth phone and you just want to use that to make an actual phone call and then bring that person into the stream, you could do that with the Bluetooth pairing. So you just pair your device before you get into your thing. Then you place your call. Like I could test that technically now, but I didn't really set it up in advance to have somebody that's willing to listen to it. But then that person could then be brought in, and you could dial up individually the volume levels of each of those that goes out in the mix. And then lastly, the buttons. And that's where, I could put little things like that in, and and by the way, there are 8 banks, 8 buttons, but you can have multiple banks, each one doing different things. Like I could switch over to my first bank, and these are the ones that came with the RODECaster Pro, so I could do that. So there's all sorts of gadgets I want to go over. My channel is devoted to improving your audio, your video, your lighting, your sound, etc., etc. So this is really just an experiment more than a demonstration. I want to do more of these. I think I'm going to schedule another one exactly a week from now. It means that's May 9th at 11 a.m., where I'm going to try to get my gear even better. So this first one is how to get started, and it's really touching the surface. But I want to go a little more in depth into some of the gadgets, and I'm going to need a second camera for that. So I'm going to plug in a second camera so you can see the desk, you can see the buttons, you can see the gear, and we'll talk about all the different bells and whistles to make this work. And one other important thing, if I can give you one other tip, and if that's assuming you're still watching, and I want to watch that timer, by the way, because I want to hit the actual 29-minute mark in this video. I'm at 28 minutes and 29 seconds. I want to get past the 30-minute mark, and we're going to do that hopefully in 1 minute. Maybe we'll do a little countdown. One important thing to know while you are streaming is if you are using a camera that's up there or down here, make sure you remember where you're looking. It's really distracting to watch somebody in a video where they're looking down the entire time at themselves. You're not talking to them. It's sort of like when you're seeing a woman and she's got a low-cut blouse and she gives you that look like, my eyes are here. Remember, when you're streaming, your eyes are wherever your active camera is. If you've got multiple cameras, make sure you know which one is active and you look towards that one. Occasionally, I do need to look down because I'm trying to fire off an effect or something like that, or hit a button, Thank you. So all these buttons. We're going to get into some of this gear next time. But the most important thing is we are now hitting the 29-minute and 33-second mark. I am committed to going past 30 minutes with a DSLR because I want to see it reach the 30-minute mark and continue to go. That to me is going to change the way I can stream, and the fact is it's actually enabling me to stream in a way that I couldn't do at all before. I mean, I would be really limited because between just trying to get it started and then going over, getting it all in focus, and there's all sorts of stuff we'll go over, like getting the right white balance and color and lighting. When you're trying to set that stuff up, oh, look at this. We hit the 30-minute and 6-second mark, and the camera's still definitely running. So we have confirmation that that's possible. So there's a lot of things I want to go over, and we will go over in a future video. Anyone who wants to get a little more in depth, we'll do that. I have to run and cut this off, and we will try to do another one of these a week from now. So I'm going to sign off. In fact, I kind of had the idea that I might sign off with a kind of a little musical interlude as I start to say goodbye. I am bringing up a little bit of, here we go. And we are going to start saying goodbye. And then I have to figure out how to stop. And there's a good thing to learn. I think I just hit the finish button and say, till next time. And I still don't know where that button is. There it goes. It's still going. I'm still...